and welcome to Homo Politicus. This is Enterprise TV. Kingsley Bass is my name. Let's get to a vital conversation, one with national dimension. As a matter of fact, this would not just affect Nigerians living in Nigeria, but Nigerians in the diaspora, and that's why this conversation is an important one. As a matter of fact, this concerns the 2025 budget. At the moment, it's still a proposal on the floor of the National Assembly. And just yesterday, and just on Wednesday, the President formally communicated to the National Assembly a proposal to increase the national budget by 4 trillion naira, a significant adjustment that raises crucial questions about fiscal responsibility, about economic strategy and national priorities. This move by the President comes amid ongoing economic challenges, and this has sparked discussions on its potential impact on inflation, on public debt and sectoral allocations. So this 4 trillion naira addition, the President in his letter to the National Assembly, well, separate letters, one to the House of Representatives, the lower chamber, and another one to the Senate, the upper chamber, did say, the President did say in both letters that this addition is as a result of, new revenue generation or fresh revenue generation from different sectors, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the Nigeria Customs Service, and other agencies of the federal government. And so let's talk about this today. What is the implication of this increase on this? And I'm joined today by Oluwa Damilola Onemano. She's a gender research analyst with Budget. Oluwa Damilola joins me virtually today. Oluwa Damilola, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that. And in studio here with me is a journalist, Emeka Madunagu. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Let's get down to the conversation. Kingsley Bass is my name. Damilola, I'll begin with you. You and the organization you represent have followed the budget. You literally follow the line by line provisions of the 2025 budget proposal. It's not the first time you're doing this. You're used to doing this, right? You've been following that, and I'd just like to get your thoughts, real quick, on the implications of this 4 trillion naira increase, which is a request now by the President to the National Assembly.
Thank you very much for that question. So yes, the President has sent a letter to the NAS to increase the budget by 4.5 trillion naira. And when we look at what the implications are going to be, especially for the country, he has made some certain projections which will, especially in terms of revenue, of which if there is no clear-cut out strategy, or there is no blueprint as to how they intend to achieve those, because it was stated that there will be a 1.4 trillion additional revenue from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, a 1.2 trillion from the Nigerian Customs Service, and a 1.8 trillion generated from other government-owned agencies. Mind you, the fact that most of these government-owned enterprises or government-owned agencies have not always been transparent, so it is not clear most times as to the specific amounts that they generate, especially because we don't see those amounts. So when you come out to increase a budget by 4.5 trillion, when we're already talking about how ambitious the 4.97 trillion is, I think it's something that we need to really reflect on, because it's going to not only it's not just the increase in the size. What does it have to do with the macroeconomic effects? What does it have to do with debt management? What does it have to do with the capital expenditure and recurrent expenditures, right? Until we finally see what the breakdown of this 54 trillion naira budget is, I feel like we're not going to fully grasp the depth of what this implication would be. But just to give a small overview, I feel like on the macroeconomic effects, truly, our inflation is going to skyrocket, especially if these spendings are not stimulated by productivity in the country, right? If we're looking at the projections for inflation, is that they're going to bring down inflation to 15%.
Yeah.
And we're already doing a 34.96 or a 34.6% on inflation. Yet you are increasing spendings without any strategy on how to boost productivity, right? The dependence on tariffs or taxes that comes from all these agencies that have been mentioned, I don't think is solid foundation enough for us to say we are truly increasing spendings. And then this extra spendings, what will it be on? Because if we are increasing the extra spendings, is it on recurrent expenditure? And we should also note that our debt has gone extremely high. As a whole country, both at the subnational level and the federal level, we're doing a total public debt of 142 trillion naira. And at the federal level, just domestic is 69 trillion naira. When we think about it, I think it's something that we need to seriously note that we're heading towards a debt crisis, especially because our revenue and what we spend on debt servicing are already matching one another, right? So it's something that we need to note. And if we're bringing up extra spendings and the revenue that we intend to get from this to match up these extra spendings is something that is fully guaranteed, we will have more to pay in terms of debt because we're going to still borrow more to be able to foot those bills, especially if those bills that have been added or if those obligations that have been added to the budget are recurrent expenditure.
Right.
So these are some of the implications I think that will happen.
Yeah, let me turn to Emeka Madunago in the studio real quick. Emeka, well, from 49.7 now to 52 trillion naira. When you look at the figures, you imagine that one should be impressed with the fact that the federal government is investing more in different sectors. The additional 4.5 trillion naira, the federal government did say, the presidency did say this would go to the solid minerals resources sector, mentioned the bank of agriculture, mentioned the bank of industry and the rest. But Dami has mentioned a few concerns and the implications that she sees that this could have. What do you say? From what lens have you been picturing this?
Well, to me, thank you very much. I think, first of all, the budget itself is unrealistic. Then adding more figures to the budget is just a joke. It's clear, the budgets, for how many years now, have not achieved more than 30% performance. I think that even 30% is even an exaggeration. If we already have a deficit, we had a deficit in 2024 budget for which the Tinubu administration had to borrow to cover. You have a deficit in 2025 budget for which you're going to borrow, 13 trillion to cover. And then if you now had additional revenues, the first thing you should have done would be to reduce the deficit. First of all, reduce the deficit, and then realign your line items, realign the budgeting, freeze some aspects. There are certain things that aren't a priority right now. There are certain things that we can maybe put a lid on for now. Certain spendings, we can put a lid on. But for you to now say, okay, even with the deficit in the budget, you are increasing it, then what you are doing is that you are just trying to derail the budget from the beginning. Because, you see, the fact that there is additional revenue from those agencies, and you are throwing it into the budget, I would like to say it's illegal. Yes, it's an affront on the Constitution, because the Constitution says in section 162, I think subsection 3, that all monies generated, by the nation should be paid into the federation account and shared. It didn't say should be paid, should be put in the budget. So what you're doing is that you are violating the Constitution. You should. Yes.
But that's really it's a subject for debate because this.
No, it's in the Constitution. I didn't read the Constitution.
I say that to mean that if the federal government generates funds, right, and this funds,
not the federal government.
Yes.
If the federation generates funds.
So this 4.5 that is to be added to the 49.7 allocated already budgeted already.
Yes.
The proposal, the presidency, says it is new revenue generated from the likes of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. That's an agency of government, right?
A revenue generating agency.
And the Nigeria Customs.
That's supposed to pay the money into the federation account. There's just one federation account. There are 3 tiers of government: federal, state, local government.
Yeah.
And it's very clear. In fact, the Supreme Court, in its judgment on local government autonomy last year, in July last year, it's pretty the same thing. That the Constitution has specified, that each arm, each tier of government is independent of the other. That local governments are not a financial appendage of the states. And in the same way, states are not a financial appendage of the federal government. So in other words, when you generate such money, you should pay it into the financial account. Not use it. Yes.
Share first before.
Well, that's the feeding bottle federalism we're operating.
All right.
Feeding bottle. So once you get, you just dump it there and share.
All right, let me get back to Damilola. You have mentioned the deficit from the initial proposal of 49.7 already, and compared that with this addition of 4.5 trillion naira. But let's talk about transparency concerns. Do you have any particular concern in terms of transparency? Because from what was transmitted, the letter transmitted on Wednesday to the press, by the president to the National Assembly, there were no specific line items. There were, sectoral provisions, allocations to say, for the solid mineral resources, we'll do 1 trillion naira. For the Bank of Industry, for example, 500 billion naira, and the rest. But there are no specifics. Do you have concerns as regards this? Okay, it's difficult getting your comments now, Damilola. Can you hear me?
I was muted.
All right, fantastic. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Clearly.
Okay. So, in terms of transparency, there are so many concerns, especially given the fact that since 2023 fourth quarter, we have not even seen a budget implementation report. So it's very difficult to assess.
Pardon me, let's get that clearly. Since 2023, the first quarter of 2023, is that what you said?
Fourth quarter. The fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Yes. We haven't seen a budget implementation report. This is us still struggling with the fact that the budget implementation reports that are even being released do not contain disbursement or utilization of line items in the budget. So we've gone from still trying to advocate for infusing line items utilization and disbursement in the budget implementation report to not even seeing the budget implementation report at all. And it's very difficult to now assess the performance of government. If they said, in the last year we raised over 80% of our revenue, how do we know? And you're coming up to say you're going to raise over 37 trillion naira in 2025. How realistic is that? We cannot compare. And over the years, Nigeria has really never done above 60% or even 50% of its revenue projection. So you're now doing a 54 trillion with a revenue projection of 37, or let's say a revenue generation projection of 41 now with the new items that have been added in this letter. At the end of the day, we are not certain of doing 50% of that 40-something trillion naira. So basically, if we need to also go back to the fact that all of these infusions in the budget, when we finally see what the breakdown is, we need to be sure that it is open to the public. There is some form of secrecy now that goes on because you're not even sure of how the public hearings are going on for these 2025 projects, the 2025 budgets. people are not being involved. The public is not being involved. People are not able to raise concerns about accountability and proper oversight for the National Assembly, right? So I'm pretty sure and I'm certain that there will be some National Assembly in sessions and budget padding at the end of the day that will have now boiled down to that 54 trillion that we're having.
You say
we do not have clearly outlined processes for our budget system that is transparent, that is accountable. I don't think we can ever achieve even whatever 20% of the goals or the capital infrastructural development projects that are being outlined in the budgets for us. So it is essential that...
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. So it's essential that every process from the creation of the budget to now that it's sitting with the National Assembly, the processes, the public hearings, everything, people are being involved. And even down to the reporting. This issue of not seeing a budget implementation report, a lot of us think it's a small issue, but it's not, because when we do not have a government that is accountable to say, we projected this is how much we gained, this is how much we spent, this is how much was disbursed, of what was disbursed, this is how much was utilized, then at the end of the day, we're just running a talk and no do government, because we just don't know what's happening. Everybody is out of the loop, right? And then we now go to Accountant General report or Auditor General report, which now comes out maybe 4 years or 5 years after. There is no form of accountability to say, okay, all these things that have been outlined in 2020 budget, it is in 2024 we now want to go back to look at it. A lot of times Nigeria lack transparency as to how it implements the whole budget process from the beginning to the end of it.
All right. You say that you were very sure there will be budget padding on the rest, like you don't trust that there will be a change from the trends we've seen in the past. That's an interesting comment to make. But then, so that we begin to close, there's a fundamental concern, at least from my point of view, and that's the fact that it looks like the presidency is trying to do so much at the same time. Even when the 49.7 trillion naira proposal was submitted to the National Assembly, there were those who said, oh, this is very ambitious but not realistic. And let me come to you real quick. Should maybe this particular addition, should this have waited for the supplementary budget to see how this proposal performs first?
Absolutely, I share that view. So waiting for supplementary, because we have still not exhausted the 2024 budget.
Yes.
Remember, the National Assembly said they will extend it.
That's running till June.
Till June, and then you're going to pass another budget in January. So
February now.
In February, just like Tinubu'S said that in 2023 we had 5 budgets. How can you have concurrently? How can? That gives room for corruption. That gives room for distorted, budgeting. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. Our annual budgets are just a bazaar. They're just a bazaar of contracts. Just, a contract bazaar. All you see, so and so amount for vehicles, so and so amount for cutlery, so and so amount for the kitchen in the Aso Rock, so and so amount for, feeding and things, but you don't see side by side. For instance, how much are you going to generate, for the federation? What informed this budget? What informed this appropriation?
Right?
No, appropriation. You are appropriating.
Yeah.
When you are appropriating, you should also there should be explanatory notes accompanying the appropriation. Why are you, for instance, last year you budgeted maybe so and so number of vehicles for an MDA. Why is it that in this budget you still have another provision for vehicles? Why is it that you keep, the same items keep occurring in every budget?
All right. Okay. Well, let's wrap this, with your final thoughts, gentleman and lady. I'll begin with you, Oluwadamilola. In closing, you've shared several concerns already, and Emeka has done so too. But is there a positive any positive whatsoever that you see with both the initial proposal of 49.7 and now the addition of 4.5 trillion naira? Is there any positive, especially with the addition, that you see as we close?
Honestly, to be sincere with you, I don't, because I believe as a country, especially in the dire situation we are in now, just like he had said, we need to look for how to cut costs. Cutting the cost of governance. Why are you buying a vehicle when you bought a vehicle last year? Why are you buying laptops when you bought laptops last year? What has been the return in investment of those things that you purchased? Right? How is it helping us as a country? Right? And if we are repeating those processes, because even in the proposed budget of the 49.7, there were so many appropriations for vehicles, so many appropriations for renovations. You have an office having over 1.5 billion naira just for renovations. And you ask yourself, is this office a newly built office or is something that has existed over the time, right? So we are not cutting the cost of governance by ourselves as a country. I don't think there's any way forward, because we're just going to keep plunging ourselves into the debt crisis more and more every single year. So I believe that really it's not a realistic budget, and I don't know.
I'm not sure that's a fine place to drop it, with Lord Amla saying, well, I don't know. But Emeka, what were your final thoughts? Any positive whatsoever? Is the future at least bright?
I'll just, avert to what the British Prime Minister, Sir Starmer did, just recently, where he asked, agencies in the UK to state how they intended to bring revenue to the country. Now, that should be part of the budgeting process. When you are budgeting, that, okay, we are going to fund such and such, item through a loan, for instance. How is that loan going to be repaid? That's the problem I have with these our politicians. You just go and borrow money. How are you going to pay it back? Before you go borrowing money, you should have a realistic plan on how you intend to pay it back. Not just wake up one day and say, okay, we're going to put a toll on Makodi Akwanga Road and then to repay a loan. That is just knee-jerk. It's baseless. There is nothing you can hold on to.
But that was written in the agreement signed by Nigeria.
No, we're not talking about transparency. Where was it transparent? Was it debated by the National Assembly? Was there a public hearing to say, okay, there will be tolling on this road, there will be tolling on this road to, that will pay back for this? How realistic is it? At the time you signed that agreement, what was the dollar exchange rate? How much are you now going to collect from, users of the road?
Commuters, yeah.
Also accounting for corruption, because some of the funds will be stolen. Accounting for cost of collection, because that's also one part of our problem in Nigeria, cost of collection. The customs will tell you, oh, we collected so and so billions. But when you check the cost of collection, you'll be wondering, why don't you just get those people, the people you collect the revenue from, to just pay directly, to the accountant general's office, so that this issue of cost of collection, we can maybe reduce it to the best minimum. So, all in all, we must come back to, we must become more realistic. We should think more of generating money for the federation than bleeding the treasury.
All right, journalist Emeka Madunagu there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
The Homo Politicus today. Oluwadamilola, many thanks too for being a part of the conversation. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Oluwadamilola, the gender and research analyst with budget. So Oluwadamilola Onemano, appreciate you again. But that's this time we have, or the time we have rather, that's the time we have Normal Politicals today on Enterprise TV. Well, I'll be reading your comments in the comment section, what you make of this 4.5 trillion addition to the 2025 budget proposal, already 49.7. Now with this, you can do the math, some over 52 trillion naira for 2025. Well, the conversation continues with that, and we'll see how soon the National Assembly would pass this and the executive would begin implementation. Thank you again for your time. Kingsley Bassey is my name. Until next time, have a fun time and bye for now.